Welcome everyone to another episode of the HR Tech Lions podcast. I am Giulio, your host as usual. And today I have the pleasure of having Janis from Hyperjob as our special guest. How you doing?
Hey, Julio. Yeah, all's well. Busy, but a good kind of busy.
That's the best part about running a startup, right? You never got a quiet moment.
Exactly. It's kind of like you never can do everything on your plate, and there's always more stuff to do. So,
True. Look, do you want to give us a short introduction about yourself?
yeah, sure. Yeah, quickly about myself. Born and raised in Riga, Latvia. U.S. educated. Get my bachelor's at UPenn in Philly. My master's from Columbia in New York. Lived in all different kinds of places, from West Africa to Middle East to Far East, and
Wow.
came back to my country in 2016 and kind of got into entrepreneurship. And now I'm building an HR tech company. So
Nice. We'll talk about that today. Well, today's episode is a very hot topic, which is why do recruiters get ignored, right? And we're going to I just use it as a question right away. So, Yanis, what do you think?
yeah. It's the way I joke about this is, the recruiters typically don't realize that their candidates or their top candidates actually get like 25 to 30 or even more opportunities from other recruiters every month. So my joke is like, hey, in this kind of job environment, you're the applicant now. Right? Ways you must stand out of the crowd. You must do a really good job. So yeah, it's just the game has changed.
Well, actually, I come from 9 years of agency recruitment. So I remember that as a manager, one of the first things I would do is try to get people to stop writing very generic messaging, or if they didn't know what was the real value about a company, it's like you call the company back and you figure out why should people go work for them, right? So what are the type of advice that you give to your clients to help them cut through the noise?
Yeah, sure. On the first level, we kind of must know what the candidates actually want to see in your message, right? And there are surveys, especially from developers, and their top reason, like why they would respond to some recruiters, would be irrelevant targeted message, right? It makes sense. Like if I'm a JavaScript developer, you target a JavaScript opportunity to me. But the next top thing is all the info is there, right? So while at the same time, and we've actually done some webinars where we test the audience, like what do you think is the top reason? And they say, it's probably the friendly message or the personalization. That comes way lower in that order of preference. So number one is give people a way to actually understand the company, the position, everything about the job. Right, that's what they're looking for, and that's enables them to kind of say like, okay, do I want to talk to you, or is it thanks, I appreciate this, good, but not really.
Okay, interesting. So you think that the first step is essentially understanding what the candidate wants and actually giving it to them?
Yes, exactly. So it's not even what I think, it's what developers specifically have said in multiple surveys, and these are surveys of like from 200 to 500 respondents, so pretty statistically significant. That's what they have said. It's not even, it doesn't matter what I or even you think, right? It's what they want to see. And I can imagine if you're my advice is like, imagine if you are a customer, right, and somebody's trying to sell to you as you're the recruiter, right? For you to understand and make any kind of judgment about whether this is relevant to you would be, please, can I have the information to myself? Right? Because, and then I can say, like, basically make some sort of judgment call. If I don't have that information and you're forcing me to kind of go back to you and hey, here's like my Calendly link, let's chat for 30 minutes, I will do that once I have the initial buy-in. Right. So give me I'm a grown-up adult, and think about this, like our communication kind of culture has changed with the the widespreadness of everything online, right? I want the information, I'm in charge, I'll make a decision, I'll get back to you. So I think that's why it's so important. And just to add on that note, those other like other sort of factors, what recruiters typically think come at the top, like be friendly, be personal, those are must have, right? But they're kind of like hygiene factors, what I call them. They have to be there, but they will not kind of tip the conversation in your favor.
It's basically a baseline. It's like a given these days. It's not.
Of course, it's like think about this. Like, what's the opposite? Like, do you want to be impersonal and rude? Well, of course not, right?
True, true, true. And look, with this, actually, a question comes to mind, right? Because I was a recruiter and I would be quite worried about just sending out job descriptions, for example. And the problem would have been, especially because JDs are usually written really badly.
Mhm.
And that's like, I think you guys have got a nice way to attract candidates with a more friendly advertisement as well. But I think that goes even deeper, right? First, really, they should push the company, whether the agency recruiter or talent acquisition, doesn't matter, but they should push for something appealing for the candidate, right? Because
Mhm.
let's be honest, not even the most introverted developer wants to read a 2 pages dry piece of paper that just explains all the minutiae details, I guess, right?
Exactly, and I think you got it very right in the point of, you know, a job description is not the same as a job ad,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the moment you're reaching out to people, you're actually doing marketing, you're doing advertising. It's like a direct marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So a description is, it starts as an internal document, right? So no, what will be in this position? What are we doing, right? So it's not about, okay, what's awesome about the company, about the team? Why is it a good opportunity for you specifically? So you have to have a good job description, but you have to build that into a job ad or job post.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, yeah, the lack of a good language about this actually it just shows the way we sometimes misunderstand this, right? The approach that you need to take.
Uh-huh. But actually, look, what something you said really resonated because one of my ex-colleagues, Nick, who's now like the talent acquisition manager for a massive medical device company, he always said talent acquisition shouldn't report to HR. It should report to sales or marketing because they should have that mindset of we are trying to get customers. Your employees are probably the most important customers you'll ever have, right? So I think what you mentioned really makes a lot of sense, and it's so ignored so often.
I would agree, and especially, you know, given the talent shortage that is hitting the sort of the knowledge economies of today, the role of the recruiting or the talent acquisition is really changing because previously, if you could just, you know, you could post job descriptions on Indeed and still get candidates, right? There were more people than jobs for
Mhm.
specific positions. So your capabilities or skill sets were all about sorting out, tracking, filtering, reviewing, interviewing. That's like the human side of hiring.
Mhm.
But now, like, what happens if you do that and nobody applies? Like, you have no candidates. That's where that marketing kicks in, right? And do you have the skills of sourcing, or you know, call it prospecting, which you will, right? Do you have the skills of outreach, automation, conversion, selling, right? So
Mhm.
that's like another hat that they have to wear. It's not that easy. It's like two jobs at the same time.
True, true, true. And I think that's probably why we see so much burnout in in-house recruiters. Because I mean, I know a lot of them. I worked 9 years of recruitment. As you can imagine, a lot of them end up working in talent acquisition. And
Yeah.
and you know, it goes two ways. Sometimes they don't have enough work, but more often than not, they've got like an average of 30 roles each, which is insane. You know, like imagine 30 roles. What people, most line manager will want 3 candidates minimum. That's 90 candidates to interview in a month. Like that's 4 a day. That's just gonna fry your brain, right? So
Exactly. And it's not just the sheer amount of work, but also the fact that there's like what, like 7 positions within that scope of work. You know, because the moment you sit down and start, you know, typing up that job post or job pitch,
Mhm.
you're a copywriter, right? The moment you want to turn that into maybe a nicer looking PDF, if some of us actually do that,
Mhm.
you're now a graphic designer.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of these little compartments within that job. It's not easy. Like it hasn't been. It's not just. And it's also getting more difficult. We feel.
Mhm. Well, there's more competition. So anyway, just to sum up, the first big tip, and I think it's very valuable, is to approach. Essentially, this is like more of a like a marketing and sales basic to really try and understand that it's not anymore. I'm reaching out. I've got a job for you. You should be thankful. It's more like I need to gain your attention first, and then it's the rest comes.
Exactly. Cut through the noise first. So you need something that is, good enough that attracts the candidate's eye. Then, once you've done that, give them as much info as possible in a, how to say this, in a as user friendly of a format as possible. Of course, you don't want to give them like a long LinkedIn message that basically is like a little Tolstoy novel. They'll just get lost, right? So
Oh,
figure out a way how to like package a lot of information in that. So obviously we are doing this with Hyperjob, right? We have these like job microsites or job pitch pages, but there are other ways you could do that as well, right? And then the third one is follow up,
yes.
because a lot of recruiters just forget to do that. And there's good data available that just the first follow up will really boost that sort of conversion rate.
Mhm.
Because we're just all people, right? Like your candidate is also just sitting there. Maybe that message gets lost. Maybe they wanted to come back to it, but they forgot. There's a lot of information floating around. They might just forget. So you kind of obviously don't follow up like 7 times, doesn't make any difference. In our experience, like anywhere from 2 to 4 follow-ups tops,
Mhm.
right, is a reasonable thing to do. Yeah.
Interesting, because actually, you said 7, and that's the statistical ideal for sales. Is actually
Mm.
with enterprise, especially 8 to 12 touch points is what is deemed to be the sweet spot, right? But obviously, for candidates, it's a B2C environment, so it would make sense that you don't have that many. But I remember when I was working in agency, we would have like at least 3 follow-ups. So.
Yeah, you have to, right? And then the question is like, how do you set that up?
Mhm,
Because if you're not automating the tedious part of work,
mhm.
right? If you have to remember, oh wait, I have to like follow up to these, like as you said, like 19 candidates today and 19 tomorrow. It's very difficult to do.
Cool.
So our advice is how like not to go crazy in this environment is look into some automation,
Mhm,
but don't automate the meaningful stuff, right? You have to be personal when
mhm,
it comes to why I'm reaching out to you specifically, right? For each candidate, you have to take a look at their profile. You have to evaluate. You have to be like, hey,
mhm,
this message is for you.
mhm.
But the work of tracking which messages go out to which candidates at what point, I don't think we can survive without proper automation, or just it's
Mhm.
very difficult to be productive in that environment.
No, I totally agree. Actually, what I preach a lot is personalizing the first message, and then the rest kind of leave it in the hands of automation. Because I mean, there's got to be a balance between the two things, right? If you're trying to personalize 3 follow-ups, let's say what 20% of candidates reply, you need to get 90 of them. That's like we're literally getting into 500-600 I like follow-ups is just not sustainable, obviously, right?
Exactly. So, but there has to be like a very clear line between don't spam, right? Automation doesn't mean when like look on your, I don't know, you go on LinkedIn Recruiter, you type up some keywords, you get like a long list and be like, oh, 15,000 people, they all are matching, right?
Bam, that's that's the message to them
Do not
all.
do that. You're screwing up the entire like profession for everybody. Don't do it.
Also, LinkedIn will put you into jail, literally.
It will. It
Like
will like
it's
very
got
soon.
the LinkedIn. I think if your acceptance rate to an email is below 8%, which I think is already really low anyway, you're literally gonna go into LinkedIn jail. They put you
Don't
away.
don't do it. Don't do it. But the way you could is, you find those people, you go through each one of their profiles. If you're super diligent, you can even create like what we call them like custom variables in that campaign you're going to send out,
Mhm,
saying like specifically for you, I'm typewriting this, like I'm writing out this one specific sentence of why I'm reaching out to you, right? And everybody gets their own sentence because there's a reason why you want to talk to them. Then you set up that entire batch of maybe 100 people. You've seen everybody, you have specifically tailored the message to them. There's obviously the common part, right? Of here's the full job description, whatever you want to call it, job pitch. And then automate the process of, copy, pasting, and sending out. So you're still being personal, but you're just, helping yourself to manage the whole time pressure. Yeah, I think that's like the sweet spot of, personal and automated.
Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Okay, good. Look, you've given us like already a lot of food for thought of what would be the standard practice. And what's interesting is that what you mentioned, it's something that it's actually quite straightforward, and yet it gets forgotten so much, right? I always usually I usually get paid to do the simplest stuff. Then I'm like, you can figure this out yourself, right? Surely. But then sometimes you need someone else to help you out with it.
True, but I also, the way we laugh about this is nothing new when it comes to marketing. This is you mentioned sales, right? That's how outbound cold sales work, right? You find prospects, you tailor your messages to them, you set up automation campaigns, and hopefully you also have a great landing page to convince people and convert and so on. So it's the same funnel. And if you think about this, right, marketers have been struggling with this problem of, hey, there are way too many goods than consumers. How do I stand out in the crowd, right? So these techniques, they're like, from the 19th century almost, like awareness, like the IDA funnel, like awareness, interest, right? Now we've gotten to a point where there are more like jobs than people. It's literally like these are proven techniques. It's nothing like kind of cutting edge crazy science. It's like adapting what works to recruitment.
Yes, exactly. Well, look, and that's, I think we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this now as well, because I kind of want to move to the second part of the podcast where it's what I call the struggles of the HR techs, right? So the questions I like to lead with is, what are, the top 3 things that your painful lessons since starting a rec tech in your specific?
Well, I think for everybody, the most painful lesson is that everyone and their grandma is building something in HR tech, right?
I have, but you know what I think happened is that 2 years ago, it was the record of investment in HR tech.
Oh, yeah.
So the VCs have never given as much money as 2 years ago. And then last year, they beat it again. So obviously, a lot of people are thinking, whoa, that's a lot of noise here. Let me join the crowd, right?
No, but that's the issue right there, and also if you think about HR tech, it is such a big field, right? We're not talking about just recruitment tech.
Of course.
We're talking also about evaluations, and we're talking screenings, and the
employee
engagement, well-being, managing remote
payroll. There's so much going on.
Yeah, and like not to mention like the 30 million applicant tracking systems that exist on this planet. Right? So,
of course, let's not forget. It's funny because the ATS is probably like the most competitive market, and yet there are so many players coming up with new things. You're like, surely everything has been invented. It's like, nope, no. Well, there's something new coming in. So actually, the previous podcast with Mick was a very innovative idea how you go about this. So it's quite interesting.
I mean, my joke, Julio, sometimes it's like, I imagine when I see yet another ATS that there must be a very talented, like talent acquisition person, like a senior person who is maybe working in their company with, Google Sheets or some like, off the shelf kind of stuff. And then one day they have this idea of like, wait, this could be a system. And then without Googling that there's like actual solutions, I'll build my own. Obviously a joke, right? Probably real weird, but I can't explain why there's like at least like 10 different ATS systems in every country. So
I think that the reason behind this, at least from my analysis, is CRMs are very similar. And the fact is that ATS and CRMs are both things that because you have to use so often, you want them to really fit. And what's crazy, there is a market for these things because everyone has got a slightly different approach and is so human dependent. So that's
Mm.
why I think that you will always see more and more come through, because there will be someone that resonates with that specific UVP, right? And then it kind of works. I,
Yeah.
I think it's a general idea, basically.
I can see that, yeah, because they do have their specific strengths. If you're looking for this, like the most amazing career page,
Mhm.
that's one thing. If you're looking at like a enterprise level process management, there's like another way. If you want things something
Exactly.
simple, I agree. Yeah, maybe that's the reason. So, but yeah, that's
Also, I think that generally in entrepreneurship, the one thing I've learned is if you're good at sales and marketing, your product doesn't have to be that good. Right?
yeah,
So
you could do that as well.
that's why there's so much competition, right? If you can sell and you can market, you can still make it happen even without the best product, right?
I'm pretty sure there's like a million product engineers and product owners who thought now, like, yeah, I would not agree. Of course, there's different approaches. I could totally see that. So yeah, that's like one of the struggles, right? Like cutting through the noise,
Yeah.
especially that we have created product that has its own new category.
Hmm.
So like, how do we position this? How do we make sure that we're not confused?
Hmm.
Because the way I think about people is like we have these little boxes in our head,
Hmm.
and you need to like, well, what is the shelf, right, in the supermarket? To use like a very good metaphor, I recently heard from, I think, guys from Fletch, right? What shelf am I on, right? So that's one. The second thing is, I mean, I think every startup founder will attest to this, but things don't move quite as quickly as you want them to. It's just how it is. I don't know. Everything takes a bit longer than you want. We're on a good track now, but when you start out, we started out like what 2.5 years ago now.
Hmm.
It seemed like, oh, but then like year one will be here, year two will be here.
Hmm.
Everything takes a bit more learning than you think, a bit more development time than you think. So yeah, I guess it's just a natural way of being. I don't know.
It's true. It's true. Like I can testify as a fellow founder that that's exactly how it goes, unfortunately. Um, okay, good. So then what's the third lesson?
The third lesson, that'll be like very internal, and it's not about HR tech in general, just about getting your company up and running. I would say do not start a company alone.
Mm-hmm.
Get a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very lucky to, like, in this regard, because I have two fellow co-founders. They're both friends of mine, but not just friends. We've also worked with them in a different capacity. They were on the board of the NGO that we co-founded.
Mm-hmm.
So before we started working together on Hyperjob, we already knew not just personally each other very well, but also professionally that we're a really interesting and good fit.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm going to go into these cliches, right? Like entrepreneurship is ups and downs, so on. But
Mm-hmm.
in those downs, it doesn't really help you much to kind of think of, oh, take things with a perspective and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes things are pretty well shit. And then what helps is that at least on a Friday night, you can grab a beer with your founding team and just vent and talk things out,
Mm-hmm.
and somehow everything seems just a bit more okay, and you're ready to go again on Monday. That's like my third thing that I've taken over these past couple of years building this.
I think that's a very valuable point. As a solopreneur, sometimes I do feel like it would be nice to talk to other people that understand the same exact pain, right? And yeah, so that definitely resonates, and I think it's really good advice for because our audience is mainly HRs and HR tech founders. That's the two main people, the targets that listen to us. So that makes a lot of sense.
And
Okay.
Julia, I don't know how you don't go crazy. I mean, all respect, being a
Uh,
serial
uh,
entrepreneur.
Literally, what I have is a standing desk in my living room. That's my office, right? But I don't know why. Like I think I'm so social because I do so much sales, cold calling, etc. That I get more than enough socialization, social
Okay.
life in a day, right? At the end of the day, I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just sit and watch Netflix or Ororo, actually, Ororo from
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know better.
That's funny. Yeah.
Okay, so look, let's now dig deep, right? Because we talked about some of the pains, but I'm aware that some of these things that you discuss, they don't have to be done on Excel spreadsheet or a reminder on the ATS, right? So what is it, if you can explain in a minute or so, what is it that you guys built with Hyperjob? And then we can dig a little bit deeper into the why, etc.
Yeah, at this moment, our first product allows companies to replace or upgrade their plain text job descriptions
Uh-huh.
into what we call job microsites or job pitch pages.
Uh-huh.
So essentially, we're moving from plain text like typewritten documents or Microsoft Word
Uh-huh.
into a unique web page for every position, right? And in that position profile, on the back of that, there's a builder where, a single recruiter can take about 30 minutes, fill out all the blocks. It's kind of like what you see is what you get, and get this well-converting job page, right? That has very good structure. It's interactive. It has multimedia because you can attach videos and photos, and there's graphical elements, right? Everything that the candidate would want to know about the company, about the position itself, things about the team and the hiring process, and location wise and position details, obviously.
So,
And that
so
is, yeah,
Ango, let me get this straight. So what you've done is you kind of turned what it would be a job description. Let's be honest, because that's what job ads are, right? They're just
yeah, most of them, yeah,
job that
or a lot of them.
99% are job descriptions. You turn it almost into a CV of the company, but a really good version. It explains like, this is why you should apply to me, right? Rather than being like, does this resonate?
That's just, yeah.
Does this not bore you to death? Then please apply,
Yeah.
right? You just in turn is like, this is who we are. This is what you're gonna come and do for us, but in a marketing way, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. So if you think about marketing, the closest thing we have there is a landing page, right? I have a specific product or service or something to sell. I set up a page for that, and then I drive traffic to that page either through direct messaging or through social media, whatever, right? So we have built this page that pitches not just the company, but the specific position, right? And then, of course, once you start sharing this with candidates on LinkedIn, it also generates nice link previews that actually drives people in. So, yes, but specifically, if I can dig even a bit deeper, you said that people can apply, but I would say mostly they will reply because it's in the context for outbound, right? They're not applicants, they're passive candidates sitting somewhere, and you want to convince them. So, in the current way of how things are being done, like we have this whole tech stack set up for inbound for people who apply, right? So we have a career page. They go on the career page, they browse the descriptions or ads in the best way. They apply, we sort them out, and we arrange interviews. But imagine, like, if you're a passive candidate and a recruiter reaches out to you, like the recruiter should do the work, right? It's not like, oh, here's a short description, and you can Google us or you can see our careers site. Yeah, why should I do the work? Like, just you should deliver that information to me. I always tell recruiters, like, imagine if a candidate applied, like if a job seeker applied to you with like a half-assed resume that said, you just Google me. I have my LinkedIn profile, and there's more information about me online. Like, would you respond? So again, you're the applicant now. So yeah, we basically are trying to give a way to show this like full comprehensive information in a nice format that people actually want to respond to.
No, I think what you're talking about is awesome, and it's just the direction in which the recruitment market is going. I think that over the last 3 years, recruiters have understood since COVID, basically, recruiters have understood that the rules of the game have changed, especially internal recruiters. Because let's be honest, agency recruiters have always had to work hard for both parties anyway, right? But internal recruiters, they were just used to be, I get a lot of applications, I filter through, I won't even care about giving feedback. And now, like, all these things are slowly starting to matter, right? Like, oh, you're not giving me feedback? I'll talk shit to all my friends about your company, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the power has shifted massively, I would say.
Yeah, and even if you kind of look deeper at that, companies even didn't have internal recruiters. They had like talent acquisition specialists, right? People who sort through applications. And then, if for the odd reason where, you couldn't get somebody to apply, then you would go to these agencies, and they would do that. I'm joking, like the dirty work, right? Obviously, over the past like 10 years, you've seen companies build out these internal talent, like internal recruiter teams, with that capacity. But yeah, it's still, it's going to get more and more difficult. And that actually brings me to like what you said, like your friend, right? That recruiting should report not to HR, but to sales and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like if talent shortages continue, this little glitch, for the past maybe year or so, I feel like the talent function should actually be up there along with sales and marketing and report to the board, right? Because it's the same machine, right? To kind of grow, you need both. You need a great product and a great team. And if you cannot have a machine that keeps on churning talent to your company and keeps outcompeting others for the same talent, it's going to be very difficult.
I actually think that we're gonna start seeing the so-called chief talent officer becoming a figure, but especially because what I have seen, when I started recruitment 10 years ago, very big companies would have a talent acquisition team. Now, pretty much any company figured that once you get to 15, 20, you should hire a talent acquisition person, because hiring from agencies, it's going to be really hard. Or if you're doing it yourself as a founder, that's time that you're taking away from other things, right? So I think that we're definitely going to see a shift in that direction. Absolutely.
I have a really interesting example actually about this idea. I think a couple of months ago, somebody on LinkedIn shared a full kind of schematic map of all the tools you need to build your startup. And there were great sales tools and marketing, operations, development, what have you. There was nothing about talent. So I was thinking to myself, like, this is almost sometimes comes in as an afterthought. Right. So we'll get stuff in motion, and oh yeah, by the way, we need people. But I think what I'm saying is right. Like, but I think this is about to change, right? From day one, as a founder, you should start think immediately, right? Okay, what's my product strategy? But then what is gonna be my talent strategy the moment I start growing and need more people? So yeah, I feel it could be a benefit actually to the profession as a whole.
100%, and I think it will become. I will go in the direction anyway. I look, Janis. I always like to finish with a very specific question. Is what's been your proudest moment since you started Hyperjob?
That's a good one. I can't name one specific proudest, but there have been a few. One is very early enough, when Hyper was just a concept, and we made the first prototype of the job pitch page, and we said, listen, before we go any further, we will run A/B tests and see whether actually we have any performance improvements. We ran the first test, we got really good candidate feedback, and we actually had 3 times more positive responses than with the regular ad. And that was like, okay,
We're onto something.
We're onto something, like this really gets me excited, right? Like it means it's not just an idea, but this approach works. And we've seen these kind of results repeat, different customers over these years. So, that was like the first thing. The second thing is, I would say, in terms of the team, last year as we were fundraising for our pre-seed round, we had our demo day at the accelerator in Stockholm. It was slated on March 25th. And the birth of my first child was slated at the very beginning of April. But the kid decided to appear 3 days before the demo day. And obviously, I think it was like something like Thursday, and on Monday, my wife wakes me up and she's like, yo, we're going to the hospital. And I'm like, wake up like, oh, I guess I'm not flying anywhere, am I? And the moment where I could basically tell that to my co-founders and tell them, listen, you guys are going and one of you is pitching, and knowing completely, like 100%, that they will do as good of a job, if not even better than myself. That was a very good moment for me. When, I'm joined here, like 3 days later, obviously, with a little baby in hand. And I know that everything hasn't stopped because I have a kid now, and who's just born, and my founders are there, sending me pictures how they're doing in Stockholm, and I completely can rely on them to do a great job. I think that was also a very like internally important moment. I knew that before, but it was just like something that I will always remember. Yeah, I guess those two come to my mind at first, but I mean,
Awesome.
there's again
No,
other ops.
it's
So
I like that you also shared a very personal moment about how you built a team that you can rely on. That's obviously very valuable, I think.
and maybe thank you. Yeah, it's the way I think about things. It's not, if you're a founder, it's not about work and life balance. It's just one life you have, and you try to merge and combine everything in one. I guess the last moment, it's not that much about pride, but just more about like, yep, we did it. We did raise €500,000 almost in our pre-seed round. It took a while. It was probably one of the longest processes I've run while at Hyperjob, but we came out so successful at the end. And that was also sort of like, yep, now we're getting started, because we're building all these new features now and then reaching out new customers. So it's a good feeling as well.
Great. Okay, great, Janis. Look, thank you for your time.
It was great.
It was great having you, and I wish you the best of luck. And obviously, there will be a link to your LinkedIn as well as to the page. Feel free to follow and ask Janis for more tips if you
Sure.
if you need
More
so.
than happy to help. More than happy to help. Thanks, Julie.